Augustine was most known for his works, The City of God and the Confessions, which prevailed throughout the Middle Ages and provided a cornerstone for church dogma. In City of God, he argues that there are two worlds, one of man and one of God. In the Confessions, he goes through a series of his own sins about stealing and having two mistresses, one of which got pregnant, before coming to know God. In this work, he is also pleading with God to solve the mysteries of human existence. He also demonstrated that the human mind could know itself without confronting the empirical world. He thought the acceptance of free will made personal responsibility meaningful. Because people are responsible for their own actions, it is possible to praise or blame people, and people feel good or bad about themselves based on the kind of choices they made. Even if people periodically chose evil over good, they shouldn't feel guilty about it all the time. He believed that through confession, or disclosing the actual or intended sin, they can be forgiven and can pursue the Christian life. He believed that the arrival to true knowledge requires a passage from awareness of the body to sense perception, which leads to an internal knowledge of the forms, or universal ideas, and finally leads to awareness of God, who is the author of the forms. Therefore, ultimate knowledge consisted of knowing God. Augustine believed the individual is free to choose between the two worlds, flesh, which is Satan, and God. He believed the reason why evil exists is because people choose it. When specific questions about the will of God came up, Augustine says, "We ought not try to understand more than should be understood." We all have an internal sense that helps us evaluate experiences by providing awareness of what Augustine refers to as truth, error, personal obligation, and moral right. Deviation from this internal sense is what causes us to feel guilty. Augustine goes so far as to say just thinking about doing something sinful can cause as much guilt as actually doing something sinful. Behavior is controlled through personal feelings of virtue or guilt, not by external punishment or reward. In Augustine's doctrine of predestination, he explains how humans have inherited the original sin, which was disobeying God in the Garden of Eden, and therefore are worthy of eternal damnation. Certain people, before they are born, are chosen by God to eventually enter heaven, and there is nothing we can do during our lifetime that can earn us entrance to heaven. That is determined by God's grace alone. Knowledge of God is attainable within an individual's lifetime. Augustine thought highly of introspection, or the examining of one's inner experiences. This was a second way of knowing God. The feelings of love when thinking about God creates a feeling that cannot be achieved through any other emotion. This feeling is the primary goal of human existence. The most important parts to human existence are faith and a personal, emotional union with God. Reason is inferior to both faith and human emotion.
Referred to as the dumb ox by his peers due to his large frame and quiet, introspective nature, St. Thomas Aquinas came from a wealthy family, where it was assumed by Aquinas' family that following training to become a priest, he would return home to the castle and become abbot at the nearby Benedict Abbey of Monte Cassino. When his family learned this was not his plan, he was kidnapped by his own mother and imprisoned. He was not angered by the kidnapping and imprisonment, and instead used it as an opportunity to convert any family members he could get to listen to him. He was far more angered by his brother's attempt to test his willpower by sending a prostitute to visit him. After approximately 1 year of imprisonment, he was released. After his release, he went back to school and earned a doctorate in theology before his 32nd birthday. Along with the other scholastic philosophers of the time, a large portion of Aquinas' work dealt with an attempt to synthesize Aristotle's work in the Christian faith. At the time, Aristotle's work was considered sacred text equivalent to the Bible, and were no longer challenged or doubted by the people of the time. Aristotle put a much heavier emphasis on reason than faith, believing in and teaching about things such as active reason, the hierarchy of nature, and the unmoved mover. Aquinas' central belief and most important work is derived from these ideas. He believed that reason and faith are not incompatible. This means that he believed both paths by reason and paths by faith led to the same goal and the same truth, which was knowing God and his glory. He believed that God could be known through revelation or scripture or examination of inner experience, as well as through logic, reason, or examination of nature. In the past, the philosopher and the theologian had always held very separate views. The philosopher would attempt to use logical proof, reasoning, and empirical evidence to verify the existence of God, while the theologian would use faith alone and had no reason to ever question the existence of God. Aquinas attempted to combine these two separate and somewhat conflicting viewpoints. He viewed each as a means to an end, essentially that no matter what way you looked at it, you would always reach God in the end. To sum it all up, Aquinas successfully separated reason and faith, allowing for the opportunity to study them separately. This led to future philosophers studying reason alone without any consideration to theological associations or implications. While this was not Aquinas' goal, it opened the door for philosophy to be studied independently of theology for the first time ever. He was the first individual to begin the shift of attention away from the heavens and back towards the earth and nature, something that would become very important during the Renaissance. The biggest difference between St. Augustine and St. Aquinas is that Aquinas believed either faith or reason or both could be used to know God. Augustine believed that inner experience and introspection alone could be trusted to be in relationship with God. He, like Plato, believed that truth is obtained through introspection and leads to the development of a personal communion with God. He viewed reason as inferior and believed that the only thing you needed to know about the earth and the physical world was that God created it. Aquinas viewed reason as being equal to faith. Both were important and useful to know God.